Greetings, viewers. Welcome to the 10th edition of the True Patriot podcast. Today, we host the mayor of Bulawayo, Coltart, who is also the former Minister of Education. Welcome, David, to our True Patriot podcast.
Thank you, Obert. It's good to be with you.
Thank you so much for taking time to join our conversation. Now, David, we'll quickly jump into it. We understand that at some point you were your Minister of Education. We have read your book, how you were trying to navigate the partisan lines then and trying to deliver services for the people of Zimbabwe. Now you occupy almost a similar position as a mayor of Bulawayo, where you also have to be dealing with central government to get services delivered. Can you just try to tell us briefly your experiences as mayor, how we are navigating the partisan waters and trying to get central government and local authority to collaborate in delivery?
Well, of course, it's a very difficult task because most cities, most local authorities have been very badly run down over the last 30, 40 years. And so everywhere I look in the city, from roads to sewage to water supply to housing, there are major problems. And of course, the moral fabric has also been allowed to decay. And so we're not as efficient as we would like. And there is also unacceptable corruption in certain quarters. So it's a major challenge, but I'm buoyed by the goodwill of residents who've been hugely supportive and by the support of most of the councillors and most of the staff. So we are gradually tackling the issues. I keep saying this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And my hope is that by the end of my term of office, I can stabilize the city. There's not going to be huge growth. It's a matter of ensuring that we can supply water and clean up the city and restore the rule of law in the city. Those are the challenges. I hope that if we lay those foundations, then growth in the city will follow in future generations.
Okay, thank you so much. But now, from your experiences, which areas do you think might need to be reformed, if any, if there's going to be a more flawless collaboration between the local authority and central government? We've seen some at times the budget not being approved. We've seen you complaining. We've seen at times the city trying to get resources for dam construction, which ordinarily should be the mandate of central government. If you could pick areas that you think, if these areas are reformed, there should be more collaboration between the central authority and the local authority for efficient service delivery.
Well, I think the key is, in fact, the devolution clause in the Constitution. As you know, our national Constitution has a very strong devolution clause. And that, in my mind, is at the center of this debate. We have to empower local authorities to make their own decisions, and that includes the office of mayor. A huge challenge that I face is that I'm a ceremonial mayor. I'm not an executive mayor, and it's a massive difference between my role as Minister of Education and mayor. As Minister of Education, obviously I had to work within the parameters of national laws and policies and cabinet. But within those parameters, as Minister of Education, I had extensive powers. The direct opposite applies to the office of mayor. We are ceremonial. We are paid an allowance, not a salary. We have very limited powers in terms of the Urban Councils Act. And of course, that hinders what we're able to do. So that applies to the office of mayor, but even to the entire council. there's a major problem in that, for example, we get devolution funds which are allocated to the city. But we find that central government determines how those devolution funds should be spent. And so these, I think, are the major challenges facing efficient local government management and leadership going forward.
Okay, so we've also noted that at times in the past, resources from licensing, vehicle licensing, would be collected by local authorities. But now we have Zinara, I think, doing the collection. Maybe what annually, if you are able to share annually, maybe the kind of budgets you get for road constructions and everything for the city and the needs the city has. How do you is it enough? What kind of percentage is it to what you would have expected?
So I'm delighted that you've raised that example, because it is, in fact, one of the best examples of what we're talking about, the need to allow genuine devolution. Let's just look at the history. In the past, city councils were able to retain vehicle licensing fees, which was earmarked for the maintenance, upgrades and construction of new roads. So every person who got their vehicle license in the city of Bulawayo would pay that money, and it would go to the city council. When government centralized, that money went to Zinara, and now we have to apply to Zinara for a fair allocation of money back. And, for example, this past year, Zinara only allocated approximately $2.5 million to the city council. Just to put that in context, the city council has over 2,000 kilometers of roads within the city, and it costs a minimum of $15 million per annum just to maintain the existing roads. And so this amount of money is nowhere near just to maintain existing roads, never mind to build new roads. And even worse than that, the money was paid to us in local currency. Now, the problem that we have with road construction is that most of the materials, and certainly nearly all of the construction equipment, has to be imported and paid for in US dollars. And we find that it's bad enough being paid as little as $2.5 million, the equivalent of $2.5 million US dollars in ZiG. But it's made worse when one thinks that we then have to reconvert that money back to US dollars to buy asphalt, to buy bitumen, to buy caterpillars, to buy graders. And so it has meant, at the end of the day, that we have not been able to maintain roads. We also feel that there has been an unfair allocation. We feel that, we know that we contribute, motorists in Bulawayo contribute far more to Zinara than we get back. And so there's an inequitable national distribution of funds. But it's not just roads. The same applies to Zinwe. The city of Bulawayo between the 1940s and the 1990s built its own dams. It built 5 dams. Lower Nlema, Upper Nlema, Inyankuni, Mzungwani, and Nsiza were all built by the city, paid for by residents, but those dams were effectively taken over by Zinwe. And we now have to buy water from Zinwe, which gets its waters from dams that were built through money paid for by city residents. Our view is that is also not correct. If we build infrastructure, we should be able to benefit from that infrastructure and not have to pay a third party. And there are a variety of other examples of the centralization of power, which hinders our ability to increase our budgets, our local budgets, and also makes for often lengthy delays in getting certain things done.
Yeah, now I think there are also issues like services, like provision of education and healthcare, where ordinarily we would look at the local authority being mandated to provide those things. But we've seen the decline in the ratio of schools to learner population, among other things, which obviously we would do better with this devolution, like we are saying. But maybe just to share if you have any plans in the pipeline for Bulawayo with regards to those critical services,
Well,
which we.
sure. So regarding health and education, the city has some 25 primary schools. These are council schools that only has one secondary school. Because of budget limitations, we have not been able to build more schools to the extent that we need to. We would like to increase the number of schools, and looking at population projections, we are going to need to build more schools in future. You know, the projections for urban populations throughout Africa are such that most African cities will double in size by the year 2050. And so we need to start planning for that now through the construction, obviously, of new suburbs. At present, we have a housing backlog of 140,000 units, 140,000 units. If you translate that into schools, it means that in the course of the next 25 years, we are going to have to build numerous more schools. The same applies to clinics. The city does run clinics, and I think we run our clinics well in these circumstances. But obviously, the major hospitals are government hospitals in Pilo. United Bulawayo hospitals are government hospitals, which the city has no jurisdiction over. We obviously try to help those government institutions as best we can, making sure that they get water and other services, but ultimately we have no jurisdiction over them.
Now we have also seen there is now this rise of some business people. These people have resources to spend. We have seen them donating cars, throwing money around, and we are always wondering that is it possible for our local authorities to get into public-private partnerships to try to deliver some of these services? What is the attitude of the Zimbabwe business community with regards to partnering with the local authorities? If you have tried to engage them to enhance service delivery, be it construction or any other services through private-public partnerships?
So I'm all for private-public partnerships so long as they are transparent and everyone understands what the relationship is and how much is being paid. I don't think that Bulawayo is in as bad a situation as Harare. If you look, for example, at the collection of rubbish, we still have a very efficient cleansing department, and we have our own refuse vehicles that ply the streets of Bulawayo every week. And so rubbish collection is working reasonably well. Of course, it can be improved. But we have looked at working with private companies in two areas. The one, for example, is in the upgrade of two of our sewage plants, Azelby 2 and 3, where we're working with the local property developer with a strong civil engineering backup. That property developer needed to find a sewage plant that could treat the effluent that came from the property development. Our two sewage plants, Azelby 2 and 3, were in bad need of rehabilitation, and we've entered into an agreement with this property developer in terms of which they will upgrade and rehabilitate those two sewage plants, and in return they can put their effluent from their property development through that sewage plant. So that's a win-win situation where the council has not had to find the money to upgrade that plant. It's been done transparently. There is a legal contract. And it's, as I say, win-win. The other public-private partnership that we're looking at is through the construction of a new dam, glass block dam, which was identified in the 1980s, which has never been built. And we're working very closely with a consortium which will build the dam and have it on a 20 to 25-year servitude, and will sell the water to the city. That means that the city does not have to fund the capital costs necessary to construct the dam, but we enter into agreement in terms of which we will purchase raw water from this consortium over the same period of time that they have a servitude. And government, I'm pleased to tell you, has accepted this arrangement. The Ministry of Water has accepted the arrangement, and it's a good example. Once again, it's being done transparently. We're working with major financial institutions such as the African Development Bank to fund that process, and so citizens can be satisfied that there will be no corruption, that everything will be done above board, that the dam will be built for a reasonable price, and the water will be sold to us for a reasonable price. Inevitably, there will be some increase in the price of water because we're building a new facility which is slightly further away from our existing dams, so the water will be more expensive, but not dramatically more expensive. So we think, once again, this is a win-win situation. But let me just put a point of a note of caution. In these public-private partnership arrangements, it's critically important that the process be done transparently and openly and subject to government's tender processes and procurement processes, so that residents know that there's been no favoritism and that the company the city council is contracting is in fact the company best suited to do the particular work, and that the contract will not result in undue burdens being placed on residents by unfair conditions being introduced to these contracts.
So just a short one, are you also taking up the prepaid water meters? We have heard that the central government is rolling out prepaid water meters across the country. And what's your view on the need to invest in prepaid water meters in situations where the water itself is not even available?
So once again, prepaid meters in principle are a good thing. One of our huge problems within the city of Bulawayo is that 48% of the water we deliver cannot be accounted for. We have a figure of 48% non-revenue water. Now, that's not all water which has been taken by residents. Because of our aged infrastructure, a lot of that water is lost through pipe bursts and leaks and the like. But there's no doubt that a lot of water is not being paid for. And to that extent, prepaid water meters are, in theory, a good thing. But once again, so long as the process of acquiring them and installing them is done in a transparent and lawful manner. We don't want to be part of anything which gives an undue preference for corrupt reasons to a particular company. We also have to be sensitive in the implementation of that. Water is different to power. If you don't have power, you have to stumble around in the dark. It doesn't actually kill you. If you don't have water, you die of thirst. And so we've got to do it in a very careful way to ensure that, for example, old age homes and other critical institutions are not adversely affected. So it needs a process. It needs a time process as well as a planning process to ensure that it is rolled out in a way that doesn't affect the lives of people. But I stress, in principle, if it's going to cut down on the amount of non-revenue water and put more water into the city council coffers, which can then be spent on improving the water delivery service, it's not a bad idea, and to that extent we welcome it.
Okay, great. So we are also looking at the issue of vendors. In the past, we've seen the local city authorities having difficulties controlling the vending population. What is the situation like at the moment
Well,
in relation to this?
the situation in Bulawayo is desperate. We have an area in the middle of Bulawayo along Fife Avenue, and it includes parts of Sixth Avenue, which have literally been overrun by vendors. And it's causing a major health risk aside from anything else. The rubbish piles up. We've got people selling gas in the middle of highly populated areas. Sadly, we have people defecating in alleyways. And it is a massive problem that we need to address. I've just, in fact, been involved in a meeting with the Minister of Local Government where we've raised these concerns, and we hope that we can work with the police and local government to restore law and order. But let me say this, that we understand that the vast, just one more negative point before I go into the positive. This has been hugely politicized. We know that there are so-called space barons, people who are tied to political parties, who use their positions of influence to extract money from vendors, which they then say allows them to be at on these streets. Of course, it's totally illegal, but it also means that these space barons are receiving substantial amounts of money from innocent vendors, and that needs to end. As I said, it's been politicized, and people often use political cover to promote what are basically criminal activities. And so all of this needs to stop. But what I need to go on to say is that we understand that in our economy, the vast majority of these vendors are poor people. We did a survey last year and it established that 64% of vendors in Bulawayo are women. And many of them are mothers. Many of them are young mothers. Sometimes they are the sole providers for their families. They can't get work in the formal sector, and so they are reliant on the informal sector for a living. And we've got to be very sympathetic to that, to the needs of those people. And so our policy has been to work towards the creation of attractive alternative venues, large-scale markets, smaller markets, and even places where solar vendors can operate lawfully in a secure environment with a roof above their head, with access to water, with access to clean toilets, ideally with solar and even Wi-Fi in the larger markets. That's what we need to work towards. But areas which do not conflict with our formal businesses. And we've identified areas on the periphery of the city, in high density areas and throughout the city where vendors can operate. We have some 12,000 vending bays available. And so the balance in this is to say we need to restore the rule of law. We need to get vendors out of the areas where they're being exploited by these space barons and areas where they're causing a major health risk, and move them to these regulated markets, large scale, smaller, and as I say, the solo areas throughout the suburbs where they can operate from. And we can then document them. We can allocate them bays, number them, know who's there. And it's a win-win situation because they have the security of knowing that they are there lawfully. And we will then get a nominal monthly rental for the use of those spaces from the vendors. And that's the way forward. But to do that, we need cooperation. We need cooperation from the police. We need to empower our own municipal police. We need to stop these space barons. and prosecute them if needs be, so that we can restore law and order in the city, but not at the cost of the livelihood of poor vendors. That's the balance that we have to achieve.
Yeah, I know you are rushing out something else, so I'll just give you a final question, which is pegged, and you can, if you want, just to respond to the issue of navigating partisan interests within council itself, where some are from another party, including the bureaucrats. Also, then also the issue to say most of the challenges we face, maybe we are not giving these residents themselves a role to participate in our democracy. Part of the planning and implementation, we don't have a bottom-up approach. We simply imposing things, and times they are rejected. To say, how do you think we can balance also that situation to have communities being so much involved in the planning and implementation, so that they carry the vision of the city? And if you want the city to be clean, they also want it to be clean. The vendors also want to do things right. Maybe if you would just tie down the conversation around that issue, it will allow you to move on.
Sure, thank you. I mean, firstly, you've raised two issues: handling the partisan issues within council. If we think about historically in this country, local councils didn't used to be heavily partisan bodies, and quite frankly, they shouldn't be. At a local level like this, it is critically important that we work in the interests of all residents. During my tenure of office, although I'm in opposition, I've tried to stress that I don't want to get engaged in partisanship. I want to focus on delivery to residents. And we constantly promote that. Of course, we, like every institution in the country, we have different political parties represented in the council. And even within those parties, if you look at the Triple C and everything that's happened to the Triple C, there are different factions within the Triple C itself. And that needs constant management. What I try to do as mayor is constantly draw people back to these fundamental needs. And it's a crisis. We need water. We need to clean up the city. We need to deal with the informal sector. And all of those can only be dealt with effectively if we focus on those issues rather than on partisan issues. So that's what I focus on. Turning to your second and last point regarding involving residents, that is absolutely critical. We should strive towards having a representative democracy. That means that you don't just get elected every 5 years, but that you have an obligation to keep going back to residents, particularly when there are major changes in policies that will affect residents. So, for example, in our budget debates, we consult residents on the budgets, not always a perfect process, but we try to draw residents in. And on some of these big issues, for example, on water delivery, we have engaged residents to get their views, but also to explain some of the method in our madness and some of the things that we try to do. If you don't get the broad population behind you, you lose goodwill, and that means it's very difficult to implement policies. So I totally accept what you say, and personally, I'm very open. I try to make myself personally very open through social media and receptive to suggestions from residents, but also to criticism. And so that hopefully if we can address some of those concerns, we build a consensus and take our city forward.
Thank you so much, Mayor David Coltart. It was great having you here. If maybe you're just parting shots, that's something that I never asked. Do you think you want to share with viewers?
No, I think this has been pretty comprehensive. There are obviously some issues that we haven't dived into in great detail. There's a whole range of issues, for example, trying to promote the city as an investment destination, trying to promote tourism in the city, our road system, the road system between Beitbridge and Victoria Falls, the state of our airport. There are many issues that we are looking at, but perhaps those are issues for another time. Thank you.
It was great having you. There you have it, viewers, understanding the architecture of local governance from Mayor David Coltart. If you have your any contribution to this particular dialogue, feel free to add your messages. Until next time, this is the True Patriot Podcast.
Thank you, Herbert. All the best. Have a good weekend.
Sharp.
Ciao. Ciao. Bye.
Kuchema